The Mountain West Commissioner, Craig Thompson.
Good morning, everybody. You know, it's interesting. You think after, what is this, 36th year as a Division I Commissioner, I would know not to schedule anything around June 30th. Made the mistake of trying to go back and visit my mother in Iowa, and UCLA and USC broke. Obviously, the membership agreements expire generally on June 30th, so memo to self, don't schedule anything through the 4th of July weekend. But, you know, like everyone, the Mountain West Conference is working diligently on trying to manage the issues and challenges facing college athletics, membership being one of many. We had a joint board of directors call with our athletic directors a little over a week ago, and the athletic directors met again on a bi-monthly call. They meet regularly on Thursdays. And, you know, it takes an entire group of leaders to navigate the myriad of issues that we're facing, not only society, but in intercollegiate athletics in general. I'm going to touch on a whole bunch of things today. I had an opportunity to go to Wyoming last week to visit with their board of trustees and governors, and we addressed some of these same issues. But, you know, they're related to what we're facing as a country and certainly in intercollegiate athletics. But, you know, simply cross-section, cross-purpose, there's so many issues that we have to deal with, and generally it's directed by people wanting the answers today to tomorrow's questions. And we have to do these incrementally. We have to go through the process of meeting the challenges as we know them at the spot in time. Several conferences, it was at this event last year, I was sitting in the hallway talking to a reporter when we found out that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving. And he held up his cell phone and said, "Did you see this?" I said, "No, I'm talking to you. I didn't see this." That's how quickly that happened. And then, of course, recently the Pac-12 movement. Who knows if it's done? Who knows where membership's going to end up? But, you know, one of the many things, I see Terry Toomey sitting out there, one of our great ADs, you know, the normal costs of doing business, and this is what I was relaying to the Board of Trustees at Wyoming: transportation, food, lodging, hotel costs, scholarship expenses, tuition rising, room and board, just the cost of doing business and maintaining a healthy Division I athletic program. The legal and political considerations. Attorneys worry about antitrust. They're telling us all the time, whether it's college football playoff, whether it's scholarship limits or any type of limitations and caps, don't do that. You're better off served by doing it on a conference level rather than national level, because then you're going to get a whole lot of people, including attorneys, involved, and perhaps the national government. We wish the national government would get involved in some issues such as name, image, and likeness. Societal issues of diversity, equity, inclusion. Sports wagering. I think about half the country now has legal sports book. Alston payments, $5,980 is allowable for educational expenses to any athlete on any campus. Right now, I believe we have two institutions, I think I'm right on this, San Jose State and Boise State, that are paying portions of Alston payments. The other 10 members are looking at how they can incorporate that into their budgets and reward for academic success the athletes playing on their campus. The evolving media rights environment, projected some conferences, i.e. Big Ten, SEC, could be distributing nearly $100 million per institution in the next media rights environment. That's astounding. And you know, that's something that it's never been an equal playing field, if you will, but it's a challenge for all conferences to stay up, and that obviously has spurned some of the recent movement into different conferences. The Transformation Committee, this is a huge one for us. A new model for NCAA enforcement. what is going to happen with the subdivisional structure. Will there be an FBS, Football Bowl subdivision? Will it include 10 conferences? Will it include 131 schools? Will there be limitations? Will there be floors? Will there be maximums or caps? Doubtful on that. You know, our coaches talk all the time, and we've had a great conversation. They're not as concerned, for instance, on the scholarship limit as they are with the squad size. Whether you have 85 scholarships or 185 scholarships, that's not the issue as much as how many people will be on your football team or basketball roster. Because what will happen then, back like we faced in the 70s, people can stockpile players. And that will be a real challenge for us to get competitive teams, perhaps. Mention the name, image, and likeness. There's rumor, but it's been rumored now for a couple of years that Congress may get involved in the implementation of name, image, and likeness. Now it's up to each institution on a state-by-state basis. The transfer portal, another new one that we've been addressing. I could probably name you a half dozen players that are at their third institution in 4 years. You know, we're seeing probably about a 50% turnover, particularly on basketball rosters. According to the NCAA, 5,230 players in football alone entered the portal last year. 1,700 men's basketball, 1,300 women's basketball players. And that was somewhat exacerbated by the allowance of the extra year from COVID that the NCAA allowed. So, you know, we're looking at rosters and asking, you know, who are these people? It's hard for the fans to develop an affinity for some of the people on the rosters because there's such a great turnover, and the pressures it puts on our coaches to fulfill their rosters. In general, the Transformation Committee is looking at a deregulation, a decentralization of their rulemaking. As I mentioned, because of perhaps antitrust implications, we need to really address how we do things. Are we doing it collectively and opening ourselves up for new scrutiny from Congress and lawyers? A new compensation model, perhaps. A lot of talk about people, you know, now a scholarship has gotten so valuable. You put Alston, you put, from several years ago, the cost of attendance. We have the best medical facilities, coaching, nutrition. Certainly we're developing better mental health support aspects for our athletes. And these costs aren't going down, and the challenge is, I mentioned to a coach last night, you've got a great booster. He or she has $100,000. Does she want to or he provide a booster club membership, buy season tickets, work on a collective to help a grouping of athletes, a particular name, image, and likeness for one student? There's so many ways to spend those dollars, and those boosters and our supporters, our fans, are challenged in what they need to do and how they can help their program. College football playoff. I really can't say much about that. Very, very personally frustrated that the recommendation made a year ago was not adopted. But we're back at the drawing board. The timeline is pretty simple. At the end of the January 2026 game, there is no more college football playoff. We've got to do something. And so the next game, the next iteration after this 4-year contract expires would be the January 27 game. So there is some time, but the clock is ticking, so to speak. And we're going to be back at it. The 10 commissioners and Jack Swarbrick met in June. We've got a couple meetings scheduled for this fall to continue the conversation, but, you know, what are we going to do and what is the future of the college football playoff? That's been very important to the Mountain West Conference. Since the formation of the college football playoff, we've averaged about $19 million annually and have participated in, in one Fiesta Bowl in that time frame. And it's very important that the college football playoff remains alive and that we're a part of it. So we're gonna begin those conversations again, not an immediate concern, but certainly something that has to be addressed. League initiatives. So our board has a very active role in defining who we want to be and what we want to be known as. There's more than athletics. We are an athletic conference. The Mountain West Conference is about athletics, but there's so much more. We've got a number of presidents that are looking at some collaboration beyond athletics of how we could do things with academics. The Big Ten has been doing this for decades, and they have cross programs and compare notes, and we're all different. We're unique. Land grant, service academies, we've got the full gamut of who we represent, but that's one of the focuses of our board. But I think supreme to all that is the absolute focus on the athletes and their experience. We're trying to come up with some innovative programs that can help them after graduation. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we are here to grant college degrees, to educate these people. Sports is very important. Athletics are a certainly mindset of everybody involved, but their safety, their mental health, their well-being, their academic success, their life skills. We've formed a small subcommittee to look at ways that we can promote their after-college experience. How can we get internships and mentor them in ways and get them a position, a career and professional development? The development of female and ethnic minority administrators. We have a very unique board. We have several minorities, women, and a very diverse board that really helps us in this conversation and the development, again, of our thousands and thousands of athletes. The transformation committee that I aforementioned is in the middle of their work. One of our athletic directors is at an NCAA council meeting today, actually, and they're getting a report from the transformation committee. And we're very active on the national landscape of what will the NCAA look like. We don't have the answer. We don't control that, certainly, but we can be engaged in the exploration of all types of new governance forms. And then the last piece is just to touch on, because it's a bit of an elephant in the room perhaps, but the current round of conference realignment. Javen gave me this stat recently. There's 131 FBS schools now that James Madison moved into the FBS ranks a couple weeks ago, July 1st. Since 2001, 49 of those 131 FBS schools have changed conferences, a little over a decade. And there's going to be 67 total in the next 2 years when the Big 12, the Pac-12, American and other conferences make their adjustments. 67 of 131. Not really good at math, but that's a lot. So what are our options? Our options right now, we don't have to do anything. We're a solid 12-team league. We had our most successful year on the field and on the courts in probably a decade. 4 10-win football teams. You saw the Bowl Challenge Cup trophy. 4 teams in the men's basketball tournament. We opted to stay put as a 12-team league last year at this time. And, you know, if circumstances were to change, I addressed the board on the call Monday. You know, what could, would, should, or can we do if an institution opts to leave the Mountain West Conference? The answer is really nothing, except to explore how we would replace that member, and does it make sense to replace that member? Everybody, not everybody, many conferences right now are going through that same exercise. You expand because you have to out of necessity, survival, if you will, or the value that new members bring to you. So everybody's doing that evaluation right now. Several conferences are in that mode, And we don't have to be in that boat. We have a very solid base, 12 institutions, and it is something, though, that we talk about on a continual basis and address and look at. So, you know, the options would be to stay at the number if we were to lose members, 2, to add members, 3, to merge. You go back about a decade ago, we talked about merging with Conference USA. We had several talks at the board level. We had a consultant and our media partners, and we gave it a good look way back when. And it did not go to fruition. Instead, we opted to expand the Mountain West. Conference USA expanded their membership, but it's something, that, my point, that we talk about constantly. It didn't happen overnight, and it's a continual conversation that we always have. So in general, there's just there are so many issues that our great leadership, our board of directors, our athletic directors, the conference staff will continue to address and monitor. Many of the things will have to be reactionary. They're out of our control. What may happen with the transformation committee? You know, again, there's always been an inequity financially. There are budgets in Division I athletics that are exceeding $200 million, $225 million. There are budgets in Division I that are less than $15 million. And so that's probably a bigger concern on a national scale, and you exclude football. One of the things that we are working on is the governance of football. I stand here to truly believe that football should be federated out. We should have our own governance structure, and whether it's the 10 conferences involved in the CFP, which make up the Football Bowl subdivision, that's what we do for a living. We run championships, we administer sports, regulate, monitor, and so it could be done by that group if that's the will and the wish of all 10 conferences or the NCAA. But it'll be interesting where the Transformation Committee comes out. Their reports, they're starting to talk about softly the membership structure and are there different regulations and requirements to be a part of the FBS. And so we're going to find out more about that in the coming months, but that's something that's of great interest to us. We want to play, you know, at the highest level that football allows. And certainly, since we have 6 institutions started playing football in the 1890s, it's a very important sport to us. And we're going to maintain that status and hopefully continue along and play in whatever, depending on CFP and bowl structures, et cetera. But that's a hot topic and a front issue burner, probably right there at 1B behind 1A in determining what do we want to be known as, who do we want to be, and what is important for our institutions to educate our athletes. So I'll stop there. I kind of rambled. I've been warned in the past, don't ramble, but I ramble. So we'll answer any specific questions anybody has.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Gabby's on this side of the room. Maya's on that side of the room, and they will bring over a microphone to you.
Hey Craig, Ryan Thorburn with the Casper Star Tribune. Kind of circling back to the 12-team model for the playoff that you helped design, how big of a miscalculation do you think it was for the Alliance not to embrace that, and how concerned are you with, you know, Greg Sankey saying now that maybe, you know, they would look at not having automatic bids in the future?
You know, a very good question. I can't speculate on my peers and the people that were in the room. I am frustrated, Ryan, on the process because it was in San Jose at the national championship. The CFP board said, come up with another model. And so we formed a small subcommittee. I had the pleasure of serving on that. And we came up with a model, and we presented it. And then it was open for public debate and scrutiny, which was the intention and plan all along. And some fellow commissioners took umbrage that we should have all been involved in it. Well, that wasn't the process, and you weren't a part of that decision-making by the board of directors back in San Jose. So I thought it was a very workable model, a fair model. It covered most, if not all, the bases, giving 6 at-large and the 6 highest-rated conferences in that year, conference champions. And I guess we could go back to portions of that model. I'm sure we'll go back to portions of that model. I'm not as concerned about the Mountain West's access as some of the others. If a model were to turn out and we can run the full gamut, there could be all at-large berths. You know, we've had a number of undefeated teams. We've won Sugar Bowls, Rose Bowls, Fiesta Bowls. You know, the league has purported itself very well and represented extremely well. So, you know, we will have teams in given years that deserve to be in some type of a playoff. But there's going to have to be some compromise, new people in the room, differences of opinions, and, you know, we're going to, like I said, not scream into it or rush into it, but it's there, it's facing us, and we need to come up with a new model. There needs to be a college football playoff.
Hi, Craig. Brent Bergeman with the Colorado Springs Gazette. You mentioned being reactionary kind of by nature in this position. Is there anything with realignment that you can be proactive in kind of bolstering the league to prevent, to prevent the next wave from impacting it?
Yeah, you know, again, they're all tied together, Brent. I've probably received somewhere between less than a dozen, but more than a half a dozen calls from institutions expressing interest in the Mountain West, if we were to add, if we were to change. So it's something that we keep our finger on the pulse of. You know, one of the potential options out there is 16 to 20 team conferences. There's going to be 2 16-team conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. Is that something the Mountain West looks at, going back, not Conference USA per se, but going back to a merger as we talked about over a decade ago? Is it something that we consider, you know, geography helps us and hurts us simultaneously? Is that something that we would look at, maybe these amount of institutions combining with the current Mountain West structure and getting bigger? But then again, it goes back to, you know, unfortunately, we've moved well beyond that academic model into more of an entertainment model, and the television revenue chase has certainly taken forefront in all this. And so back to the value added, just because you're bigger doesn't mean you're more valuable necessarily, or that your media rights increase dramatically. So, you know, there's so many variables to consider, and that's why we meet, you know, on a couple times a month basis with the athletic directors and our board of directors, just to keep them informed. Here's 2 options. Here's a solution. Here are some things to think about. So, you know, we're not sitting back, but we're monitoring as well. For us right now, we have people in the Mountain West Conference in those leadership roles that say, let's go out and get some people. Let's add some people in case we were to lose members. Well, if you don't lose members, then you've got, you know, more people trying to get involved in the distribution of either the same or lessened dollars. And so, you know, it's kind of a cyclical argument, if you will.
Is there a number of institutions that if you did add, you would be able to renegotiate media rights, or are you locked into that?
Well, that's a very fair question. Yes, we could. There's a conference membership composition clause But on that particular topic, I've had really good conversations in the last couple of weeks since the Pac-12 announcement with both Fox and CBS about a potential restructuring of our contract if and dependent upon who's in the league. And, you know, one of the things, and I say this repeatedly, Terry can vouch for it, is that our value to CBS and Fox is, quite frankly, Thursday night, Friday night, and that 8 o'clock Saturday window. And if you could imagine a world where we're the only conference in the West playing in those windows, that increases our value.
Morning, Commissioner. Alec Nolan, KFSN TV, ABC 30 back here.
Yeah.
With NIL and with conference realignment, and it seems like the rich are getting richer, and you can disagree with that if you want, is this becoming a game of have and have-nots?
It might be, but you know what? I've mentioned those budgets, and we've never out-resourced anybody. Well, we have. There are conferences that don't have the wonderful resources, the Mountain West, and the investments that we make. But it is what it is. We are going to play and compete. At the heart and soul of athletic competition is 6-on-6, 5-on-5, 11-on-11. And we might not have the best training table. Our weight room might not be quite as large, but that doesn't mean we won't compete and challenge. And, you know, it's just like your own personal budget. You might want to live over here in the gated community, but you are allowed in your finances have you living over there. And so, you know, we do the best. I think we're extremely diligent in how we fund, but the commitment that the Mountain West makes is phenomenal. Canvas Stadium at CSU, San Diego State Snapdragon, brand new stadium in a couple of weeks. Hawaii got a bill signed by the governor, a $400 million stadium. And Utah State put tens of millions of dollars into a new football structure and the indoor facilities. So we're doing what we can with the resources that we provide ourselves. And I think we're doing it at an extremely effective level.
Hey, Craig. Brandon Ortega from KOB, NBC in Albuquerque. A year into NIL, what are your biggest concerns with that department, and particularly how it's affecting Mountain West schools in a positive and negative way?
Well, that's one that really the conference doesn't dictate or have a position, really can't, because we have such different state laws and university regulations, et cetera. There is an effect. I just read, flying in here yesterday, Texas Tech is paying, I think, $25,000 to athletes. And so, again, kind of back to the previous question, we do what we can with the resources we have. And if that means that a young man or young woman are going to go to institution X because they can make an extra, pick a number, in name, image, and likeness deals. But, you know, those things might be able to transfer and travel with them. Our schools have done a tremendous job in educating our student athletes. By design, the NCAA, you're supposed to be hands-off and not set up those NIL. I think we all know that that's not necessarily the case. Maybe administratively that is the case, and we're following the rules and regulations, but you know, there are people involved in the recruitment process. And when those kids go into the transfer portal, maybe because of name, image, likeness, or other reasons, you know, those are things that we can educate, and that gets back a little bit to the whole enforcement piece. We've got to do a better job of saying, you can't do that. It's a black and white rule as it stands on the NCAA books. You cannot do what you're doing in that area. And so I think we're all over the map. We have people that are providing or getting involved in the supplementary NIL space, and others are just doing their jobs and educating and letting the athletes know this is what you can and can't do. I don't know that it's going to have a tremendous effect. I think the transfer portal is equally as important right now because, you know, let's get to the bottom of it. Most athletes are transferring because of playing time, but there are other reasons. And it could be name, image, likeness. It could be a collective. It could be other reasons, or maybe it's too cold or it's too hot or this campus isn't what I liked or that coach in particular. But it's a very daunting experience, and I know it's one of the many things our athletic directors are faced with addressing to give them the best environment and opportunity to play the sport that they love.
Jay Tuss, KTVB Boise. Craig, you addressed a lot of topics, obviously, in your opening statement, whether it be NIL, realignment, maybe limited access to the college football playoff. In your mind, what is the biggest, threat or hurdle right now to the future of the Mountain West Conference?
I think staying at the highest level, participating in the NCAA tournament and playing in the regular season, I hate the terminologies and the monikers that are put on the autonomous five, the Power Five word. I don't know if there will be 5 conferences as we know them today in the autonomy space. We've been as successful, if not the most successful, group of 5 conference under the FBS umbrella, if you will, since our existence in 23 years. And so, I think it's playing at that level because at the end of the day, that's who our fans, they want to see us competing against each other and winning Mountain West championships. But equally important, and maybe more important in some regards, is who those non-conference opponents are. And are we playing at the highest level that we can afford to play? And that's where the transformation committee is going to come back into play and potentially be something that we'll have to address if there are particular standards that are different than today.
Hey, Craig, Idaho Press. You mentioned in your opening statement that you would like to see the federal government get involved with some NIL stuff. What would you like to see them to do?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe balance the playing field a little bit because there were a number of state laws regarding name, image, and likeness. And then when it passed the NCAA and was allowable, they have gone back and revised those state laws and changed those state laws. COVID's a great example. It's 180 degrees different than NIL, of course. But we had a real challenge getting back on the field because of the different state laws. I mean, we were really all over the map. And so NIL is kind of the same deal, that in this state it's allowable. You can do X, and in that state it's Y. So then that gets back into the competitive disadvantage or advantages because some states are allowed to do things that other states can't. Johnny or Sally come to your campus and visit and say, well, I can get that in this state at that university, but I can't over there, so maybe that eliminates the recruitment of that student athlete. So I don't have the solution. I wish I had a better answer for you. I don't know what the answer is, but we need a more consistent regulation is the point there.
As obviously we navigate a complicated time, when realignment usually dies down, that's when usually something happens. So what was your initial reaction when you heard that USC and UCLA were joining the Big Ten? And what was your initial thought on how that would potentially maybe impact your conference? And you also mentioned that you don't have to do anything right now in terms of adding teams. As you learn more, does it have to be a crutch to always add teams? Like, what would a team that you would guys add to the Mountain West have to bring to the Mountain West for you to want to add them?
Yeah, by NCAA definition, you need 8 football playing institutions to be a member of an FBS, to be an FBS conference. So arguably that would be the floor. It's it's one of those conundrums in that we address this frequently and have addressed frequently. As an example, Boise State has been a member of the Mountain West Conference as long as both BYU and Utah were members of the Mountain West Conference. You know, it's an ever-changing landscape, and we continue to address it and look at it. You know, where we have to get the definition is, who are you, what do you stand for, what are your interests as an institution? Geography is still important to the Mountain West. It might not be to other leagues, but we've always been an airplane league. You can travel Air Force, Colorado State, Wyoming via car or bus. I guess Terry, San Jose State, Fresno State, you can probably bus, and that's about it. You know, every other sport, every other team is getting in an airplane and traveling, and the costs associated with to compete. We have a beautiful part of the world, but it's vast, it's expansive. So, you know, you look at all those factors of where would we go, and geographically, there's not many schools in, well, let's say west of Denver. 10 in the, well, currently 12 in the Pac-12, 12 in the Mountain West. BYU's going to the Big 12. New Mexico State and UTEP in Conference USA. So now you're talking another time zone away to expand. And that's something our league considered. We had an opportunity to look at a number of institutions a little over a year ago and decided we're best put at the 12 we currently are configured with, and you know, we had a great year competitively.
Hey, Craig, Kirk Kenny from the San Diego Union Tribune right here. As all this plays out with realignment and the dominoes fall, when we come out on the other side, what would be the best case scenario that you could see for the Mountain West and what it will look like?
You know, it's really hard to, I hope I don't regret these words, decimate a conference. You know, there's always people, there are institutions, there's opportunities to rebuild, replenish the membership. I would hope that in a couple years there's a new CFP format. We're a part of it. We have access to it. That we are playing football against, and all the sports, against institutions that our fans and our alumni want to see us play against. You know, one of the concerns about the growth of conferences and the expansion of conferences to 16 plus members is that their opportunities for non-conference games are limited. You know, whether you play 8 or 9 conference games in football, that leaves you, you know, three opponents outside of the league. You know, I take with great interest, you know, to talk about, and I don't mean this disparagingly, I'm a Big Ten graduate, that, you know, boy, now my school will be able to play USC and UCLA in football. There's 15 schools in addition to you in the Big Ten. I don't know how often you're going to play anybody, and then throw Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, all those people into that mix. You're only going to play 8 or 9 conference games, and that means 6 or 7 you won't be playing. And so, depending on the number of conference games. So I just hope that we're continue to be a part of the highest level of college football, which today we know as the Football Bowl subdivision, and that we're able to honor, you know, the tradition that, again, we've got, I think, 7 institutions, including Hawaii, that started football in 1903 or something like that. 7 institutions have been playing football for 120-something years. Not a lot has changed. A ton has changed. But just being able to play and compete at the highest level and be a part of.
Commissioner, back of the room here, Andrew Martin, KGPE TV in Fresno, California. You talk about the constant communication with the 12-member institutions. everybody looks around the country, they see the AAC is losing some of their members to the Big 12, BYU joining as well. As we stand here today, do you feel like the Mountain West is best positioned in the group of 5 and also in those conversations with the 12-member institutions? Do you get the sense that everybody wants to band together and remain as a 12-member Mountain West Conference moving forward?
You know, I hope so. And there's rainforests being decimated by the newsprint daily on this topic, and everyone has an opinion, and, you know, we're going to stay together and we're going to bind together. That's probably accurate to the point. I've been struck by the cliche recently that man's loyalty is as strong as his options, all right? So I'm very comfortable with the 12-team league. I'm thrilled with our 12-team league. Will it stay a 12-team league? Will we remain? I think that if there's opportunities, you know, I go back to the would, could, should, can question. If someone has an opportunity for whatever reasons, branding, revenue, maybe geography, doubtful geography for us, but to improve themselves, they will move on. But right now, my challenge and the challenge of our board is to continue to grow the 12 institutions, have the type of year athletically and competitively that we had last year. We've had 9 football championships, and we've had 5 different champions. We're very balanced. We're very competitive. That can be good and bad. We don't have that runaway program, if you will, particularly in the sport of football. We're very balanced. And so we've got a great thing going, a wonderful opportunity. A lot of these schools have been playing each other for a long time. Colorado State, Wyoming, I think, first played football in 1899. And so, you know, there's some history and rivalry. Doesn't mean as much to a lot of people these days, but, you know, hopefully, you know, the Mountain West is a good home for all 12 of the current members and will remain.
Hi, with the Hello Star Advertiser. If geography is such an important factor in the league, why is eliminating divisions a better format?
Really, the moving point there, and we had a subcommittee look at that whole option conversation, was to better enhance our chances to play in the college football playoff or a New Year's Eve bowl. And by having a 7-5 division champ against an 11-0 or a 12-0 champion, and if they're upset in that, 60-minute football game, then we probably lose our opportunity to be representative in that group. So that was the biggest singular driving force, was to get the best opportunity for our champion to play in a New Year's Eve bowl. And the second was really to get an opportunity to play each other a little more frequently. In the current division format, you didn't see someone for a longer period of time. And obviously, a number of leagues have gone to that abolishment of divisions, and there may be more. I don't know what they're all thinking. But for us, we felt those 2 reasons were enough to look at the dissolution of divisions.
Commissioner Scott Gerard over here with the zone in Salt Lake City. To follow up on that a little bit, walk us through the process by which you came up with the new schedule with each team and how they were assigned their 2 teams that they played, and the process by which that came together.
Yeah, we started with a subcommittee of athletic directors, and we had several conversations with the full athletic director group. Again, this is only a 3-year deal, and so who knows what it'll look like in year 4. And that's coterminous with our Fox and CBS agreements, with the current CFP agreement, with our bowl relationships. And so it's, I don't want to say it's an experiment, but it's not forever, perhaps. It may be for forever. But what we tried to do, I would imagine if you polled all 12 athletic directors, maybe pick a number, would have wanted to play these two people annually. Well, that's impossible. You know, you can't work a schedule. So we went to our computer and our analyst that helps us put these together. And the format we came up, we tried to stick with some rivalries and histories and et cetera, that made sense. But, you know, it's something that, again, for the two reasons I stated before, we felt was really important for us to look at. And it's something that took a while. We've been talking about this for a couple years.
Any other questions for Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you for attending, and we'll see.